ग्लोबल स्किल डेवलपमेंट मिशन में आपका स्वागत है।
The previous exercise discussed resizing images. I hope I didn't overwhelm you there. There's sort of this technical side to sizing and scaling your images. I would strongly suggest you just stick with the basic principles that I gave you there in the previous exercise for sizing your images until you get more comfortable with it, and then you can get a little bit more complicated, more involved with it if you like. I want to address cropping now in this exercise. So I'm going to take this file that you and I went and resized in the previous exercise, and I'm going to close them out. And when Photoshop prompts me here, I'm not going to bother saving this guy. Okay? Instead, I'm going to go after a new file, an image called cropping.jpg. Go ahead and pop this guy open. Or once again, you can go and use something that you have yourself kicking around. One of your own images would be perfectly fine. Okay, so in my example, at least, we have a lopsided barn. As a matter of fact, it isn't the barn that's lopsided, it's the person holding the camera, that would be me, that took the photograph on an angle. I did that on purpose to show you how to straighten out a photograph, okay, using the cropping methods that we're about to get into. What I'd like you to do is tap your C key on your keyboard, just C all by itself. And what that does is that activates the crop tool for you over inside the toolbox, okay? Now, interestingly, as soon as we activate the crop tool, notice we get this frame appearing all the way around our image. Okay, this is the cropping frame, and notice that the crop frame has these sizing handles or scaling handles on the top and the bottom, on the right-hand side, the left-hand side, and also in all four corners as well. So what I can do is I can sort of decide what parts of my image I want to keep and what parts of the image, I want to get rid of, okay, or delete, crop away. Anything that falls outside of the crop frame, notice it appears almost kind of grayed out. That means that this stuff on the outside edges of the crop frame is going to get deleted if I go ahead and proceed with the crop. Anything that appears inside the crop frame is going to be kept. All right. Now notice too that I get this sort of this grid pattern appearing inside the crop frame. This is called the rule of thirds grid. If I move my eyeballs up to the options bar across the top, and the options bar has been changing a few times for us already. Hopefully you've been keeping your eyeballs on this guy. This drop-down menu right here, we can go and choose the type of grid that we want to have appear inside the crop frame, something like this. Okay, so it's entirely up to you. You can certainly explore these guys if you want. Usually I just leave the default, which is the rule of thirds. Okay, now how do I actually apply the crop? How do I go ahead and cut away all of the excess on this image? We've got two options. You can either hammer your enter key on your keyboard, or you can double click anywhere inside your crop frame. I prefer the good hammer on the keyboard just to kind of, it's sort of an emotional thing for me. So there you go. So there's cropping your image, okay? Cutting away some content from your images, okay? Now, give me a second here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to undo that because there's more that I want to show you here. I'm going to head to the edit menu and choose undo crop, okay? And of course, that takes me back one step. Notice I'm still on the crop tool, but I don't have the crop frame anymore. What you could do is you could switch back to your move tool, for example, and then go back to your crop tool. Or what you can do is just click and drag out a frame. That would be perfectly fine as well. And now we're back in action. We're back in business here. Okay, so what I'd like to do here is I'd like to try and straighten this image, as a matter of fact. And here's my technique for pulling this off. There's a bunch of different ways to do this, but while I have the crop frame activated, I'm going to zoom in on my image. And all I'm doing is I'm hitting Command plus or Control plus on your keyboard there, and I showed you how to do this earlier. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to find an edge or a line inside this photograph that's supposed to be straight. I'm using the left-hand side of the barn here, sort of this outside wall. That wall, I'm assuming, is supposed to be straight. Sometimes in different images, it could be a lamppost or the edge of a building or who the heck knows, right? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring the edge of my crop frame kind kind of beside or adjacent to the line that's supposed to be straight anyway, okay, inside the photo. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring my cursor outside of the crop frame. Notice when I bring my cursor outside of the frame, my cursor changes to a curved double-headed arrow, suggesting that if I click and drag, I can actually rotate the image, something like this. Okay, so what I want to try and do, and I'm totally eyeballing this, by the way, is I just want to try and line up the line in the photo that's supposed to be straight with the edge of the crop frame. Okay, so something like that, maybe a little bit more, somewhere in there, something like that. Okay, so that's my trick, is I just find a line inside the photo that's supposed to be straight, and then I just sort of eyeball it, right? And then all I'm going to do is I'm just going to pull out my crop frame, so I'm not cutting any parts of the barn off or anything like this. Maybe I want to keep that little, I think that's a lightning rod or a weather vane way up on top there. Something like this, right? There we are. And then the satisfying keyboard pound there, enter, or double click inside the frame there would be perfectly fine. And there we go. We now have a cropped, somewhat straightened image inside Photoshop. Sometimes I'll take another run at it to get it completely rotated around. But in any regard, there you go. There's how to crop and straighten your images.